They said Daniel Carter had destroyed his wife completely, leaving her with nothing but a suitcase, a stray cat, and $40,000 that wouldn't last a year in the city. But what no one knew was that while Daniel celebrated his victory in a penthouse across town, the woman he had thrown away was quietly building a hidden life beneath a crumbling bridge that the city had forgotten decades ago. And within weeks, that secret refuge would lead her to discover something that could shatter Daniel's empire forever. The day the divorce was finalized, Elena Carter stood outside the courthouse with the cold autumn wind tugging at her coat, while reporters and lawyers hurried past without noticing her. And across the steps, Daniel laughed as he slid on a pair of expensive sunglasses and wrapped an arm around a woman young enough to be Elena's daughter. 24 years of marriage had ended in less than 20 minutes inside that courtroom. Daniel's attorneys had been ruthless and prepared, presenting stacks of financial documents proving that nearly every asset Elena thought they owned together had been placed in carefully designed trusts long before the divorce filing. The house worth nearly $3 million had been purchased solely under Daniel's company name. The investment portfolios were legally protected. Even the luxury cars belonged to a corporate entity Elena had never heard of. By the time the judge finished reading the settlement terms, Elena was awarded exactly $42,000 and 30 days to vacate the home she had spent 2 decades building. Daniel received everything else: the house, the construction company, the vacation property, and the reputation of a successful businessman who had worked hard for his wealth. As Elena stepped out of the courthouse that afternoon, Daniel called after her loudly enough for several onlookers to hear. "You should be grateful," he said with a smirk. "Most people your age don't even get a second chance." His girlfriend giggled beside him. Elena didn't respond. She simply picked up the small carrier holding her gray tabby cat, Milo, and walked away. Pride was the only thing Daniel hadn't managed to take from her. The problem was that pride didn't pay rent, and within days Elena realized just how brutal her new reality was. Apartments in the city averaged nearly $3,000 a month. Even the smallest studio required proof of employment and credit checks she could no longer pass. She tried calling old friends, but many had drifted away during the long years she spent supporting Daniel's career, hosting corporate dinners, managing charity events, and raising a family that had slowly scattered across the country. By the end of the week, Elena was sleeping in her car, parking in different neighborhoods each night so security guards wouldn't notice her. She told herself it was temporary, just until she found work, just until she figured something out. But every morning brought the same quiet dread, the realization that the life she had known for more than half her existence had vanished overnight. One evening, after wandering for hours along the industrial district near the river, Elena noticed something she had never paid attention to before. An old railway bridge stretched across a narrow canal, its rusted steel beams silhouetted against the fading sunset. The tracks on top were abandoned, covered in weeds and cracked wooden ties. Beneath the bridge, massive concrete support columns created a cavernous space partially hidden from the road. A narrow maintenance staircase descended from the sidewalk down into the shadows below. A faded warning sign hung crookedly on the railing: "City infrastructure access. Authorized personnel only." Elena stood there for a long moment, staring at the dark space beneath the bridge. She knew it was probably a terrible idea, but terrible ideas sometimes look a lot like survival when you have nowhere else to go. She looked down at Milo's carrier and sighed softly. "Just for tonight," she murmured. Carefully, she descended the rusted metal stairs, her phone flashlight illuminating chipped concrete and scattered debris. The space below opened into a surprisingly large chamber formed by the bridge's foundation, nearly 50 feet across with thick pillars rising to support the roadway above. Old maintenance pipes ran along the ceiling, and the faint rumble of passing traffic vibrated through the structure like distant thunder. The ground was dusty but dry, protected from the rain by the massive concrete slabs overhead. Elena walked slowly across the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the quiet. To one side, she discovered a partially enclosed alcove where old wooden pallets and construction tarps had been left years earlier. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't safe. But it was sheltered. For the first time in days, Elena felt a strange flicker of relief. She set down her suitcase and opened Milo's carrier, letting the cat stretch and explore the new environment. Milo padded cautiously across the dusty floor before returning to rub against Elena's leg with a soft purr. "I guess this is home for now," she said quietly, almost laughing at the absurdity of the situation. That first night she arranged her coat and a folded blanket on the ground as a makeshift bed and lay staring up at the dark underside of the bridge. Above her, headlights occasionally swept across cracks in the concrete as cars passed overhead. But down in the hidden chamber, no one could see her. No one knew she existed. It was strange, but the silence felt comforting after the chaos of the past few weeks. Elena slept deeper than she had since the divorce began. When she woke the next morning, sunlight filtered through gaps along the edge of the bridge, casting long golden beams across the dusty floor. For several minutes, she simply lay there, listening to the distant hum of the city waking up above her. Then she sat up slowly and looked around the chamber with new eyes. The space wasn't just a hiding place. It was an opportunity. If she was careful, if she stayed quiet, she could make it work. She could survive here long enough to rebuild her life. Over the next few days, Elena began quietly transforming the forgotten space beneath the bridge. She found discarded furniture near apartment dumpsters, dragging a small mattress and a folding chair down the maintenance stairs late at night. She bought a cheap camping lantern and portable stove from a thrift store. She collected water containers and basic supplies. Piece by piece, the cold concrete chamber began turning into something unexpected, a secret home hidden beneath the city. Weeks passed, and Elena settled into a routine. She spent her days at the public library searching for work and charging her phone, then returned to the bridge after dark when no one was around to notice. Milo adapted quickly, prowling the shadows and chasing the occasional mouse that wandered in from the canal banks. For the first time in years, Elena began to feel something she had forgotten during her marriage to Daniel: control over her own life. Down here, no one judged her. No one mocked her. No one reminded her of everything she had lost. But 3 weeks after moving beneath the bridge, while clearing debris from an old storage alcove along the back wall, Elena noticed a rusted steel panel partially hidden behind a stack of broken pallets. And when she pried it open with a crowbar she had found in the trash, she discovered something buried deep inside the bridge's foundation that no one had touched for decades. A sealed metal safe filled with documents that would soon reveal a secret powerful enough to destroy the man who thought he had erased her from the world. Elena Carter had expected the rusted metal panel behind the pallets to hide nothing more than old wiring or broken pipes, maybe a forgotten storage compartment left behind by city workers decades earlier. But when the sheet of steel finally broke loose and fell to the ground with a hollow clang, her flashlight revealed something that made her freeze. A small, heavy safe embedded into the concrete foundation of the bridge. Dust coated the metal door, and the old combination dial was stiff from years of neglect, but it was clearly intact. Someone had deliberately sealed it behind that panel, hiding it where no one passing through the bridge's maintenance space would ever notice it. Elena crouched beside the safe, brushing dirt from its surface while Milo circled curiously at her feet. The lock looked old, the kind that required patience and careful listening to open. She tried the handle out of instinct. Locked. Of course it was. Still, the discovery stirred something inside her, something sharper than simple curiosity. Whoever hid this safe hadn't wanted it found. That meant whatever was inside might be important. Over the next several days, Elena became quietly determined to open it. During the day, she visited the public library as usual, but instead of searching for jobs, she began reading about mechanical combination locks and vintage safes. She learned that older safes sometimes responded to careful dialing if the internal tumblers could still be felt through the mechanism. It was tedious work, but Elena suddenly had a puzzle to solve, something to focus on besides the wreckage of her former life. Each night she returned beneath the bridge and sat cross-legged in front of the safe, slowly turning the dial while listening for subtle clicks inside the metal door. Days passed, then more days. Nearly 2 weeks later, just as she was beginning to suspect the lock might never open, she heard it, a faint metallic click. Elena froze. Carefully she adjusted the dial again, following the pattern she had been testing. Another quiet click answered from inside the mechanism. Her pulse quickened. She gripped the handle and pulled gently. For a moment nothing happened. Then the heavy door creaked open with a long, rusted groan. Inside the safe were several metal document boxes stacked neatly together. Elena lifted the first one onto the small table she kept near her sleeping area and opened the lid. What she found inside immediately erased any doubt that the safe had been hidden intentionally. The box was filled with financial records, ledgers, transfer slips, and bank documents from offshore institutions. As Elena flipped through the pages, she began noticing patterns. Large sums of money moving between shell companies and foreign accounts in places like the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg. The deeper she looked, the clearer the picture became. Someone had been hiding millions of dollars through a network of secret financial channels. Then Elena turned another page, and her hands suddenly went still. Printed clearly on the document was a name she knew better than anyone: Daniel Carter. Her ex-husband's name appeared beside multiple account transfers. Some were for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Others were even larger. The dates stretched back more than a decade, long before their divorce. Elena felt a cold wave spread through her chest as she continued searching the files. Daniel's name appeared again and again, tied to offshore accounts that had never been mentioned during the divorce proceedings. According to the documents, millions had been quietly moved overseas while his lawyers insisted in court that his accessible assets were limited. Elena slowly closed the folder and leaned back in her chair, staring at the safe. The settlement that left her nearly homeless had been built on a lie. Daniel hadn't just taken everything from her. He had hidden the truth from the court itself. Above her, traffic rumbled across the bridge as evening settled over the city. Down in the quiet chamber beneath it, Elena Carter sat, surrounded by proof of her ex-husband's secrets. For the first time since the divorce, she felt something stronger than grief or anger. She felt control, because now she understood something Daniel never expected. The woman he thought he had destroyed was sitting in possession of the one thing powerful enough to ruin him completely. And this time, Elena intended to use it. Elena Carter didn't act immediately after discovering the documents in the safe. Instead, she spent weeks studying every record carefully, photographing each page with her phone, and organizing the evidence so nothing could be dismissed as rumor or speculation. During the day, she returned to the public library, researching financial fraud laws and learning how investigators handled offshore tax evasion. The more she read, the clearer the truth became. Daniel Carter hadn't just lied during their divorce. He had committed serious financial crimes for years. Millions of dollars had been moved through shell companies and secret accounts, none of which appeared in the financial disclosures his lawyers presented in court. The settlement that left Elena with almost nothing had been built on deliberate deception. But Elena didn't rush. She waited until every document was copied and stored safely online. Then she prepared 3 envelopes. The first was sent to the Federal Financial Crimes Division with copies of the offshore account records and transfer statements. The second went to the state tax authority. The third went to the attorney who had once represented Elena during her divorce, along with a short note explaining that the settlement had been based on fraudulent financial disclosure. After that, Elena simply waited. The response came faster than she expected. Within weeks, federal investigators opened a case against Daniel Carter. News reports began appearing about a local businessman under investigation for offshore tax fraud. Soon after, Daniel's offices were raided and his financial accounts frozen while authorities examined the evidence. Elena watched the story unfold quietly from a computer at the library, hardly believing how quickly the man who once controlled every part of her life was now struggling to defend himself. Not long after the investigation began, Elena's former divorce attorney called her with surprising news. Because Daniel had hidden millions in assets during the divorce, the settlement could legally be reopened. The court ruled that the original agreement had been obtained through fraud, and Daniel was forced to disclose the full extent of his finances. When the truth finally surfaced, the judge ordered a new division of assets. This time, Elena received the share she had always been entitled to, millions of dollars Daniel had tried to hide. The man who once mocked her for having nothing was suddenly facing criminal charges, massive fines, and the collapse of his reputation. Months later, Elena returned to the bridge where her new life had quietly begun. The hidden space beneath it no longer felt like a desperate shelter. It was the place where she had rediscovered her strength when the world believed she was finished. Eventually, she moved into a small apartment of her own, but she never forgot those weeks beneath the bridge when survival forced her to think clearly and act patiently. Because in the end, Daniel Carter hadn't lost everything because of revenge. He lost it because the woman he tried to erase refused to stay broken.